Hello everyone. I apologize for not having posted for a while, but things have gotten really crazy for about the last month and a half, and so I've sort of fallen behind. I actually got sort of out of the routine of doing these. Not that there's much of a routine to get out of, but I am hoping to sort of catch up. There's a lot of videos I sort of have rolling around in my head, and I'm hoping to make some of those fairly quickly to get some more content up and to continue this conversation. But I have been well. Things have been going well. But today I wanted to talk about trying to reclaim my childhood. Um, as I talked about earlier, I think in either my introduction video or the one on discerning, um, that coming to this journey at a late stage in life, I was 65 before I sort of got out of the stage of denial and realized that this was something that was real and I really needed to do something about it. Uh, Looking back, trying to bring back your history and trying to make sense of who you have been um, is for me at least, it was important because I was having a hard time. Oh, there's a cat up there. I was having a hard time um, really sort of getting over the hump of accepting who I actually am. And I could see it all made sense. It all seemed real. I felt that it was true. But there was kind of the sense of, well, how could I have missed it for 65 years? And so over the last several months, I've been sort of going back, looking at events in the past, starting to realize when I expressed myself underneath the male shell, and when there were situations where I was free to really be me, and I was, and that's sort of helped me sort of get to a point where it started disentangling myself from the male shell. The problem is that when you go back into childhood, I have all of my memories from childhood, but they're really there's no real objectivity about it. There's no way to get to any objective stance. And there's no way to really evaluate because, first of all, children's memories are somewhat faulty. They tend to be fairly selective in what they remember. They tend to be selective in how they color those memories. And so most of those memories, when I would look back on them, I would look at them from a very male perspective because that was how I was convinced I needed to look at those events. And that was certainly the persona that I was creating for myself at that time. And so trying to penetrate that curtain of maleness around those memories, or including those memories, was very, very difficult. And if my parents were alive, and they're not, I could have gone back and I could have talked to them potentially. But we went down about 3 weeks ago to see my daughter in Texas, and my sister came up from where she lives in Texas, and we had a sort of miniature family reunion, if you will, visiting with her. And my sister and I talked, I guess, a couple of nights before she came up, and I told her that I wanted to ask her a couple of questions, and I wanted to ask her basically what she remembered about our childhood. And then the second thing was I wanted to ask her what she thought of me when we were children. What was her impression of me? And which I thought was kind of an unfair question because if she had asked me what was my impression of her, I would have basically said, I don't know, I don't really, you were just you. Which is kind of the answer I kind of expected to get. And so we stayed at the same hotel and we had breakfast together because it's one of those hotels that has breakfast in the morning. I think they almost all do now. And so we would meet down in the little breakfast area and have breakfast together, and we would sit and talk for about an hour. And she brought an album of photos that my mother, our mother, gave to her. She's given one to me that has most of my pictures in them, but they're very male pictures. What was interesting in the photo album that she brought, though, was I come across much more effeminate in those pictures with her. There's a couple where we're dressed in our finery for Easter, and we're standing out in front of the house. And she's in her nice dress, and I'm in my little suit that they had gotten me for Easter. And we have exactly the same pose. And it's one of these things where if they were just sort of there and there wasn't anything else, you'd go, okay, it's kind of weird, kind of strange, but yeah, you know. But knowing what I know, it's one of these things where I look and I go, oh, okay, I can see. I'm actually almost mimicking her and trying to act like her. It's just that it gets interpreted by that at that time as sort of male, and therefore somewhat effeminate for a male. When I asked her how she felt about me, she said, oh, I didn't like you. She said, I never liked you. She said, I thought you were a sissy. And so I sort of went away and I thought about it. And I came back to her the next day and I said, okay, I have a concept of what it means to say that I was a sissy. And I'm certainly not going to disagree with that, because I think I probably was. But what do you mean by it? And she said, you're very effeminate. And the other thing she said is, we used to tease you. I always felt bad about that later, but we used to tease you really pretty badly, and you never fought back. And as we were sort of talking about the teasing that went on, which was, I mean, she's 2 years older than I was. I was trying to hang out with her and her friend. It's a very normal thing to tease your little brother to get him to go away. Little brothers tend to fight back and do things. But as we talked about it, one of the things that really struck me was a sense of frustration that I was feeling at that time. And the image that comes into my mind, and again, this is an adult looking back on childhood, and am I reading things in? I don't know, but this feels real, and it resonates with some other periods in my life. It's one of those things that all of a sudden starts fitting. But the feeling, the sense I get is this child who is enormously frustrated because she is trying to be herself. She's trying to act and do the things that she wants to do, to be the way she wants to be, and is constantly being interpreted as being a male, and therefore something to be teased, something to be belittled, something to be put down. And there's this frustration that grows from not being able to be understood as being the girl I was. And we've had some technical problems with computers here for some strange reason. It seems to be paramount. But when we got back, there was a firmware update that went on the laptop, and it went badly, and it took me all day to get recovered from it. But I got really frustrated, and I started realizing this is sort of a normal habit. I get into these situations and get overly frustrated very quickly, and it's not the frustration just for the situation at hand. It is a frustration that goes all the way back. It is part of the release valve for this frustration that was experienced but never expressed when I was a child. And I can go back and I can look throughout my history of when I've had these episodes where I've just got overly frustrated for small things, far more frustrated than I should have been. And it was a realization to me that this was because this other frustration was resonating. And it was being expressed in these little outbursts of frustration, to the point where I really become self-destructive, or self-harming, usually by hitting things with my hands, I'm actually surprised I haven't broken a hand in the process. Um, over the course of years, my hands must have really toughened up quite a bit. But um, but that realization that tying that piece of frustration in really helped me see that I've always been me. I've always been this woman, this girl, this female who's been trying to express myself, and I started understanding how the male shell actually started forming. That the male shell really got to be this accommodation to the outside world, that I would take on these behaviors, I would do these things because I thought they were supposed to be done. And my sister talked a little bit more, and one of the things I heard her say, I'm not positive she really said this, but one of the things I heard her say was, you used to work really hard. You always impressed me as working really hard at being a boy. And I think that was an accurate assessment, that I really had to work hard at being a boy to meet other people's expectations, because that really wasn't who I was. And it's always kind of puzzled me that after I came out to my sister, we called her up about a year ago, a little over a year ago, and told her over the phone. We were going to tell her in person, but she had a fall and hurt herself and wasn't able to make a trip up, I guess a little over a year ago, to meet with us when we went down to see my daughter. And we weren't able to go down to where she lives and talk with her. And so we ended up having to call and talk to her on the phone. And it was at the same time that I told my daughter that I was transgender, and then we called her and told her that what was going on, that I was transgender. And she just took right to it. She just was like, oh, okay. And she's been very supportive. I've sent her pictures of me. She's been very supportive of me. She's been very accepting of me. We don't see each other, obviously, that often. It's been a couple of years since we got to see each other. This past time when I went down, it was the first time she'd actually seen me as me, except in pictures. And that's always kind of puzzled me. I was like, well, that came awfully easy. And in terms of talking with her and looking at the childhood memories she had of me, for me, it became a lot easier to understand her rapid acceptance. And I think it has a lot to do with the fact that when I came out and I said I was actually a girl and the body was male, she just, I think she went, oh, this all makes sense now. You know, the childhood actually does make sense. So anyway, that was a big step forward. I don't know that I will claim that I fully accepted myself as me. But the last day we were there, I was driving back after getting lunch, and bringing lunch back to where my wife was staying. And it just had such a feeling of peace, and that all of a sudden being me was easy. And there's still some other steps that I've gone through since then, but that feeling pretty much has stayed present for the entire 3 weeks since we've been down there. And so there's still periods of dysphoria, but there's been no sort of internalized transphobia. There haven't been these doubts. There haven't been these accusations that I've hurled against myself in the past. And so I feel a lot closer to really being at a good place in terms of just being me and allowing myself to be me. There's a lot of things I'd still like to change, a lot of things I'd still like to do differently, but it was a real blessing to be able to talk to my sister, or to be able to reclaim my childhood, and to have a sense of myself as growing up, and the way that I handled the difficult feelings, like a child would, not very well, but handling those difficult feelings, and then the denial started making sense, and the level of denial that went into hiding those feelings. I mean, I always knew that I was good at denial, and it turns out I actually was. So anyway, I want to stop sort of here, and I've said pretty much what I wanted to say. Thank you very much for watching. I hope this sort of helps in terms of, I'm not sure how it'll help you, but it's really helped me, and maybe it'll be a help to you. I hope it is. But thank you very much for watching. If you've not subscribed to this channel, I don't put it out on a regular basis. I'm not on a schedule. You can't come back like every Wednesday and find something. So please subscribe. I think I end up over here, put a beautiful picture of myself up. And you can click on that and you can subscribe. If you hit the little bell, it'll tell you when I've posted something. But again, thank you very, very much for watching. I do appreciate it.